Okay, first of all, I want to say I fully trust this conversation can be a little bit triggering for some people. That's okay. I fully trust that you take care of your triggers, that you take care of yourself, that you regulate yourself, and you're always welcome to make a respectful comment here, right? But when we talk about toxicity, what I'm talking about really is dysfunctional patterns in relationships, right? And it's so important to address the dysfunctional patterns in relationships because I'm guessing if you're in my world, I'm assuming you want a deep relationship. You want to experience deep intimacy. You want to experience deep love. You want to feel loved and taken care of and provided for in your relationship. You want to experience that the deliciousness that is divine union, right? So we gotta see the dysfunctional patterns. We gotta be aware of the dysfunctional patterns that we practice because there are a lot of patterns that are given like really sneaky, really subconscious, right? So the more we become aware, the more we can address that, and the more we can, like really shift that and change the pattern for something healthier, for something that is going to support our vision of love. That is the point. I want you I want to give you the tools, the knowledge, the tools, the practicality for you to create your highest vision of love. Whatever that means to you, there is no cookie cutter, there is no one size fits all, right? Whatever that means for you to have a relationship that feels really good to you, that feels in alignment. And that's the purpose of this conversation, right? So, with that said, dysfunctional patterns are patterns that are created at some point in our lives for multiple reasons. One of them is being hurt, experiencing some sort of unsafety, some sort of unlovability, some sort of, hola Marin, nice to see you here, some sort of when we feel unworthy, unlovable, when we feel hurt, when we feel heartbroken, when we experience heartbreak, we create from this place of wounding and hurt ego and broken heart, we create this. The ego needs to make sense. The mind needs to make sense of why we at some point we didn't feel safe, or we didn't feel or we were hurt. And in that process of making sense of it, we also create patterns and create mechanisms to protect us from more hurt, from more pain. Are these mechanisms always good for us? No. Are these mechanisms always supporting us in creating the relationship, the kind of love that we desire? No. This is how then we start creating these dysfunctional patterns, right? And a lot of us as well, another piece of that is that not all of us, or very few of us, if you're anything like me, most of us just weren't modeled right ways of relating, how to relate to other people, how to relate to, like we just learn by watching our parents, watching the people around us, right? So a lot of us, we just learned that dysfunction, we took it after our parents or other people and people around us, right? So if as children, if along our lives we didn't learn how to get our needs met in a healthy way, in a safe way, then we create the dysfunction. We create these patterns that are just like, I'm just gonna do this, right? So an example of dysfunctional patterns, and here's the thing, if you are like, oh no, I'm not toxic, I'm not dysfunctional, like this is probably this conversation is for you. Right? Because it's a spectrum. It's not like, are you toxic or not? It's not a black and white thing, black or white thing. It's a spectrum, right? We all have our wounding, our trauma, our pain. We all do, right? And we all, like we have done our work, and yes, and it's a work in progress, right? And having dysfunctional patterns in our relationships doesn't mean that you're not enlightened enough. It doesn't mean that you're not spiritual enough, or that you're broken, or that there is something wrong with you. No, it's just ways that your nervous system, have created to get your needs met. That is all. See it objectively, right? So, hey Shailene, nice to see you here. So, dysfunctional patterns, I'll give you some examples of the most common ones are like projection. When we don't have, for example, when we don't have the tools to process our emotions, when we don't have the tools to navigate triggers, to process our emotions and our feelings, what we do is we project onto other people, right? We project. That's what the ego loves, the energy of victimization. Like, poor me, it's always other people's fault, it's not my fault, it's always my partner. Right? So the ego, that's the first thing that we want to do, right? And sometimes, especially when we're hurt, we want to make our point, and we want the other person to be the responsible for it, for whatever we're feeling, right? So projection is one of them, when we don't have the tools for emotional processing. Another one is like the victimization, blaming, the hyper-independence is a big one. What are my hyper-independent babes? Like, professional one for most of my life, since I was freaking 12 years old, a lot of us had to become hyper-independent, lean into the masculine energy, like really heavily, because we didn't feel safe. We weren't properly, we weren't offered the level of safety that we needed. So we just became hyper-independent. We became the strong, independent woman. I don't need anything from anyone. I can do it all by myself. I don't need a man. I don't need support from anyone. I'm gonna sort my life out by myself. Where are my hyper-independent women? Right? So these mechanisms, then, when we are so much into that hyper-toxic masculinity within ourselves, then we bring that as a dysfunction in our relationship. What does this look like? In my past relationships, what I used to do was, being like in charge of everything, like over-controlling, this hyper-controlling. Like, I used to take pride of wearing the pants in my relationship, and I was only comfortable attracting men who would let me wear the pants in my relationship. I needed to make the decisions. I needed to decide everything, from where are we going for dinner, where are we going for vacation, where are we gonna live, how are things, like, yeah, there was like some input from the other person, from my partners, but at the end of the day, I needed to have this control. And not only in the relationship, but also then as taken to the bedroom, right? In the bedroom, unable to get out of my head, like thinking and planning how everything is gonna go, how things are gonna happen, so mechanic, the disconnection from head and body, and like everything overly planned. So there is a lot of nuance on this, on what I'm saying, right? But my point here is like hyper-independence at the end of the day, like this energy of I don't need anyone, and being like super hard, and then we bring that into the relationship, and the dysfunctional patterns that come from that is mostly emasculation, emasculating our men. Fuck. Like most women, what's really funny, that a lot of us, most women are like, yeah, I want a man who is like really masculine and strong, and that is a leader, and that has clarity, and that brings leadership in my relationship. And then we're the first one to emasculate them. We're the first ones to emasculate our men. Then he is trying to take the lead, and then we keep pushing back. Where do you keep freaking pushing back when your man is trying to take the lead? Where do you not honor his boundaries? You want a strong man, but the moment he sets a boundary with you, then you push back and you dishonor. This is very sneaky toxicity that a lot of us have. And again, it's not because there is something wrong with you or because you're a bad partner. It's the ways that we have to develop. It's mechanisms at the end of the day that we develop in order to feel safe. For a lot of us, for a long time, the definition of love is to have control over someone else, to be in control. Let me know how this is landing for you, babes. Let me know if this is resonating. Right? So that's our definition of love. My definition of love for a long time was, just to be in freaking control. Let me control you. Let me say yes to everything I say, and we're cool. Which is at the end of the day a form of codependency, right? Like it's a very smart, sneaky way of codependency, like even coaching our partners. For the babes who are here, who are coaches, facilitators, a lot of you are, coaching our partners, or being the mommy to our partner, being the mom and trying to educate them and to change them and to coach them and to teach them, and that is dysfunction. Not understanding that your partner is an individual and he does not have to meet your expectations, in the sense like it's not your responsibility to coach him or change him. That is dysfunction, that at the end of the day is emasculating your man. You gotta be okay with the ways, yes, you are allowed to have standards. Of course, I'm all about standards, if you've been here for a while, I'm all about standards. But there is this nuance between the standards and codependency. There is like this little nuance, and that it's taken me so many deep conversations with my coach to really untangle that. I want to go a little bit deeper into this. Like, stay with me, follow me on this. I'm gonna share this part with you. Codependency versus standards. They can be so fucking entangled, right? So sometimes at the beginning of my partnership with Jordan, I was like, that we were in situations where I would be like, with my coach, no, I can't take this anymore. Maybe this is not it. This is not my man. No, my standard is that my man makes me feel that I'm his number one priority. My standard is that my man chooses me over everything else in the world. That's what I was telling my coach this one time, where I thought we were done. This was in the very first few months of the relationship. And when my coach asked me, okay, let's see where we're at. And then, the situation was, without going so much into detail, the situation was that Jordan had already asked me that he he had with a lot of time in advance, he had said he was gonna be busy with his friends, he was gonna be doing a retreat, and that he was gonna be really focused on his friends for that weekend. What I did that weekend, when his attention was somewhere else, I got so triggered. The little girl, little Elisa, wounded baby inside me, you know, my trauma was saying, you're not important enough for him, you know. And you see how we distort. At the end of the day, here's the thing: toxicity, dysfunction is distortion. The ego distorts reality to make sense of the pain, right? So inside me there is this distorted perception. I'm not his priority, he's choosing other people over me, he blah blah blah, all this kind. I'm telling myself all these stories, when at the end of the day, he very securely, in a very healthy way, he told me in advance that he was going to be busy with his friends, that he was going to be doing this retreat. He was, you know, he was doing everything like in a healthy way. He was honoring his boundaries, and he was asking for his needs in a healthy way. I was distorting all of that. The voice of my trauma, the voice of my wound was saying, he doesn't love you. This must be the proof that you're unlovable. You know, that that deep wound of unlovability that a lot of us have, that most of us have, whether we've worked on it or not. You know, so that's one example of, you know, my ego wanted to put that as a standard. My standard is to feel prioritized over everything. And at the end of the day, that's dysfunction, that's codependency, right? Does that make sense? And there is a lot of things that we do that way in relationship. And again, there is nothing wrong. You're not broken. You're not a bad partner. The point here is understanding the root of the distortion, the root of the dysfunction in your relationship. When you understand where it all comes from, right? And why, you know, just understanding that at some point in your life, in the past, you didn't know how to get your needs met. So you develop these ways, dysfunctional ways to get your needs met, right? But it's so important to understand this, because that's why, you know, it's so common to be in relationships that are dysfunctional, that there is codependency and a lot of toxicity, even if it's sneaky. You know, toxicity doesn't always look like, everyone paints it like a very strong narcissism or, you know, violence or things like that. Sometimes it's really fucking sneaky. You know what's a very sneaky way of toxicity as well? People pleasing. Not honoring yourself. That's a way of toxicity. Why? Because at the end of the day, not honoring yourself and people pleasing perpetually in your relationship is creating distortion. If you think that the only way to get your needs met in your relationship is to people please, is to say yes to your partner to everything they say, is to continuously give in and dishonor your boundaries, your needs, not listening to yourself, and then accumulating resentment inside you because you're not getting your needs met, but at the end of the day you're only neglecting your own needs yourself, and you're expecting your partner to meet your needs when you're not doing that for yourself. It's a fucking entanglement there, you hear me? So there are very sneaky ways, right, that we bring in toxicity in a relationship. And at the end of the day, this is a work in progress, right? This is a work in progress. Right now, I'm in such a beautiful, divine partnership. If you've been following me for a while, if not, go to my profile and check all the, where I come from and all the story and how beautiful and divine my union is right now with Jordan. And sometimes my dysfunction comes up, my sneaky patterns of emasculation, because that hyper independent woman still lives in me. I'm still integrating her. Even if I've been doing this for a while now, I'm still integrating her, and that is okay. I used to shame the fuck out of my independent woman, the toxic babe in me. That's how I made this archetype within myself. The part of me, that version of me that was in a lot of dysfunction in my relationships, and she's the toxic babe. I'm creating, oh my god, I can't wait. There is a program coming. Yeah, fuck it, I'm gonna share it with you. There is this program coming called Toxic Babe, where we're gonna dive really deep into this, all the toxic patterns, how to understanding and healing these patterns of hyper independence, blaming, victimization, emasculation, all this kind of thing. So it's coming very soon this week. Anyways, going back to what I was saying, this hyper independent woman still lives within me. One of my very strong patterns that came up also at the beginning of our time living together, Jordan and I, was I realized how I talk down to men. I didn't realize this until we moved in together, because the first 6-7 months of our relationship, we were only we were living separately in our places, and so there was a lot of time for me to come back to my center. We were only seeing each other like 3 or 4 times a week, so we had these separate lives. But once we move in together, the deeper wounding starts coming out, and the trauma and all these kind of things. So I realized, right away that I had this pattern of talking down to my man. I was like, and then I caught myself, and I was like, no shit. This is not the way I want to talk to my man. This is not the way I want to talk to my king. This is not the way a queen talks to her king. There's sneaky ways of him saying something and I'm snapping, very softly, or not yelling or anything, but softly, snapping or being condescending, or even giving silence treatment when I was triggered or things like that. And then I was like, fuck, do I wanna talk to my man this way? Is this the way I wanna talk to my king? No, right? And then I realized, oh shit, I've actually been doing this forever, in every relationship, in every other relationship with a man, because with Emma, I didn't do that, but you see the relationship with the masculine, how it's different. With my ex-partner, with Emma, I wasn't that toxic. But anyways, what I was going with that, in that talking down, silence treatment, that kind of thing, emasculation right there, and then I understood, oh, okay, I've always been doing this thing of, when things get too good, or when, somehow talking down to them, treating them like shit, because at the end of the day, I just needed to keep them at an arm's length distance, because I could not let them in too close. I was so fucking terrified of real deep intimacy. I was terrified of being hurt. I was terrified of being abandoned again. like my father did. I was terrified, like all this wounding from the past. And so what I did as a protection mechanism, I would treat my partners like shit, so they would not get too close. So I would not let them in. You see? So at the end of the day, and I used to shame myself a lot, for this, like all my dysfunctional patterns, and I used to like really feel like I'm a really fucking bad partner, and that just perpetuates the cycle of I'm feeling so, I'm such a bad partner. I'm not good. I'm not good person. I'm not a good person. I'm unworthy. I'm unlovable. Blah blah blah. It's just feeling that the wounding, the pain, the trauma. So now, in this process of healing the patterns, this is something that I always tell my clients. The number one thing that I will recommend you and ask you to bring to this process of healing your toxic patterns is add a ton of fucking love and compassion and patience to this. That is the number one thing. Because as long as we're shaming ourselves, judging ourselves for these things, it's going to hold us back from really moving forward, from really healing. A lot of the number one ingredient to heal our toxic patterns is love. Because the toxic version of us, the toxic baby in us, is that version of us that didn't feel loved, that was hurt at some point, that felt unsafe at some point. So we need to bring a lot of fucking love to that version of us. That's how we heal her, right? That's the number one thing. And then going into the rabbit holes of, understanding where it comes from and how to change it. But it is possible, When I discovered how, all these dysfunctional patterns in my relationship with Jordan, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to change this. And I've said this story before, but when I realized how this pattern of talking down to him, one day he was sitting in the living room, and then I came to him, I knelt down in front of him, and I said, babe, I'm ready to change this pattern. I'm ready to talk to you and treat you only in the highest possible way. This is something that I've always done. I know I'm gonna fuck up. I know it will come out again. But I want to give you permission. I want you to help me and call me out. Call me out. I told my partner, my ego inside me was like, what the fuck are you doing? You're getting yourself in so much trouble. But I asked my man, call me out anytime I'm talking to you in any less than fucking highest royal way. Call me out. And he was even like taken aback a little bit, He was like, wow, this is beautiful. And he said, I never had anyone, to ask me to hold boundaries for them. And it was such a beautiful moment, like just being fucking vulnerable and committing myself in my full devotion, in my heart devotion, coming to him and saying, I'm ready to change this. And it's not gonna be perfect, but I'm ready, and it's been a beautiful journey of like releasing that toxic pattern in my relationship, right? I didn't plan to bring that story today, but I think it was needed, and it's a perfect example too. How is this landing? Let me know if you have any questions, my loves. Do you have any questions? How is this landing for you? Give me some hearts if this is landing for you. Super resonating. Awesome. Love it, love it, love it. So yeah, my loves. There is so much to say around this, but that's the main things that I wanted to say. That's the main points. Quick recap about what we covered in this is, we understood. Okay, we have a question: where to start identifying our toxic patterns? Start reflecting in your relationships, or even with yourself. If you're in a relationship right now, or in your past relationships, like, what are the patterns that support the growth in your relationship? Anything that is not supporting the growth, anything that feels icky, any kind of, that doesn't feel good, any kind of interaction, any kind of relating that doesn't feel good in your body, that is not supporting the growth and the depth in love. That's how we start. Start there and be like, here is something that I brought up after I talked to Jordan about this, and saying like, hey, I'm ready to change this pattern, and I want you to call me out. From that moment onwards, I've been on this mission of, I'm gonna be the best partner I've ever been in my life. In this relationship, it's my devotion. I'm so committed and so devoted to be the best partner I've ever been. The best partner I can be. That is my devotion. And sometimes women are like, but what if he doesn't value it? What if he doesn't deserve it? What if he takes it for granted? I'm doing it for myself first. I'm doing it in the name of love, right? So ask yourself, to answer your question, where to start identifying our toxic patterns, is ask yourself, is this a way where the best version of me, the best version of the partner in me, is this how she relates? Is this how the queen treats a man, treats a king? And that will give you a lot of answers. And for as I said earlier, there is a lot of patterns that are very subconscious, very sneaky, very, hola mi amor, hello baby, so nice to see you here. There are a lot of toxic patterns that are super sneaky, right? Like the people pleasing. We think we're being nice to our partner. We think we're there just like showing love. But at the end of the day, sometimes if we're neglecting our own needs, if we're neglecting ourselves, if we're not asking for what we need in a healthy way, and we end up nagging, resenting, blaming, victimizing ourselves, that is toxicity, right? We want to be nice, but at the end of the day, then we end up in these toxic patterns, right? So ask yourself, where are you not getting your needs met in the healthiest way? Where are you manipulating? Where are you blaming? Where are you being in princess mode, the victim? Where are you emasculating your man? Where are you being codependent? Where are you constantly trying to change your partner? These are, I think that's a great start.